Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Adrian and Fred's podcast. This is episode two, and my first guest, who is a good friend of mine, who I've worked with on the Habs Tonight channel. He has his own great channel called Drew Dekes, and he's a good friend of mine, a great mentor. And again, Drew Dekes, I'm happy to have you on, buddy. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for inviting me. First of all, it's cool to be a
Yeah.
guest. It's usually the other way around for me. I'm always seeming like I'm doing whether it's an interview or just a conversation, whatever this is. But it's
Yeah.
no, it's cool to be on with you, man. Thanks for
Oh.
inviting me.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on here. I know you're a busy guy, and yeah, it's great to be doing this again. I know we had a lot of our we did a lot of stuff with Haps tonight with in regards to like streams, and we
Oh
did
yeah.
one interview, we did a trade deadline show, so it's good to be doing this stuff with you again.
Yeah, it's funny. I look back at like our trade deadline show with my buddy Kyle from Sportsnet there, Kyle Bukauskas, who's the
Mhm.
man.
Yes.
Uh, he's such a speaking of mentors, he's been my mentor for a better part of like I don't know, going on 6 years now. Like
Wow.
he's a heck of a guy, as you know. And then we did our interview with Mike Weaver, which was a lot of fun. That was like it was like the top of the list for you. And the fact that we got to get him on was a blast on Habs Tonight. So I went back and watched some of our shows together and before jumping on with you here. So no, it's always good to
Oh,
look
it's
back and
awesome.
reflect and see what we've done, right? It's like it's pretty amazing all the stuff we were able to do on Habs Tonight.
Absolutely, man. It was awesome. And I still, I guess, like reminisce and think about all the fun times we had on that show with, the two of us and, the rest of the team too. And
Hmm.
obviously, we I still keep in touch with the team, and hopefully we can run it up again one day. That would be pretty awesome. I'm praying maybe one day, hopefully. I've heard maybe some murmurs or rumors, I guess, whatever here and there, but we'll see. Obviously it's just talk right now, but yeah, like even with that Mike Weaver interview, that was all you with that. You were able to get him on, and I was so thankful that you got him on, and that was just that was awesome. It was just really cool for myself too, because like he's from the same town as me, and we kind of had that I guess connection. And when we were talking about
Yeah.
like Bramalea and old Brampton and stuff, it was just really cool, you know.
Yeah, no doubt. It was a
Yeah.
blast, man.
Yeah.
We are talking about kicking up the show again, perhaps tonight, possibly next season. That's what we've talked about with the team. So we don't
Mhm.
have anything set in stone, like you said, but we all miss it and we all kind of want to, bring it back at the right time also when the Habs are maybe turning the corner during the rebuild. And we were lucky, so fortunate to start that show and have no idea that they were going to go to the Stanley Cup that season, right? So we had lightning in a bottle for a while there on that show with Dale Weiss leading the way, as we all know. And yeah, if we bring it back, I'm sure Dale will be involved again. Is kind of the idea, and that's something he actually mentioned to us as well. So he's in the process of moving to his dream home, and so we'll
Mhm.
see what the fall brings us, man.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm just looking forward to watching a better hockey team, though.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, it's and I know we talked about this the other day about the rebuild, and like I'm at a point now with the team where I understand where they are as a team, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, I want them to start being a little more competitive. I thought maybe this year they would have maybe taken that next step. They started
Yeah,
off pretty decently, guys like Sean Monahan and Mike Matheson were, scoring a lot of points in the beginning of the year. And, it looked, maybe they're not going to make the playoffs so much, but maybe they'll have like a something in the top 10, but maybe not bottom five. But obviously a high draft pick is always good. But just to see some competitive hockey is good. But I mean,
hmm
I watched a little bits and pieces of the game in against Tampa Bay on Saturday, and they played okay. They had some good chances, and obviously they lost in the shootout. But again, it's just the team's a process. I have to sometimes I remember too. They're just a big process, right? So
yeah, huge part of development, and actually, that's the one thing where from the fan side of things, like we've never really paid this much attention. At least I don't remember back before social media being able to follow them this closely and see how the development of all the young players on the Canadians right now, and then also the up and coming prospects are developing, and just seeing how much they've revamped the hockey operations department to the point where they really cleaned house and started from scratch with Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes, and then you bring in Adam Nicholas and all the skills coaches, and even Murray Poulian coming in as like a someone to work with the prospects, like just the coolest thing ever. In my opinion, in seeing the way women's hockey has been growing too. My sister has season tickets to
Absolutely.
the women's Montreal team, and it's more entertaining than the Canadians right now. I can tell you that. So,
I'm telling
um,
you, yeah.
it's good stuff, man. Yeah,
Yeah, the PWHL has been really great. It's good
it's
hockey. It's
fun.
really good
It's
hockey. It's
it's fun
fun.
and good hockey. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the girls, they play hard.
And they're letting
And
them
I
actually have some
yeah.
contact, which I don't mean to
Yeah.
cut you off there, but I was like,
No, no, that's
you know, um, I've interviewed Sarah Nurse last year, and I wanted to ask her or somebody just, what do you think about the idea of the women's sport becoming a bit more physical, allowing some body checking? And then it just kind of like naturally happened. And now there's more physicality, and it's almost more competitive than we've ever seen it, which I think is probably the most encouraging thing too, is just seeing seeing their game develop and all the cool new rules that they're actually implementing for the playoffs and at the end of the season. Like you can't earn, they're trying to discourage tanking in their league. So this is the first season, right? So they're tampering with a lot of things. But what I thought was cool while I'm watching the Habs, and my sister's like really filling me in on everything that's going on because I can't watch much of their games sometimes.
mhm.
But just the fact that they're discouraging tanking, so they're getting them to try to have competitive games at the end of the season that actually matter for the draft, so that you're not, you have to win in order to get a better draft pick. I think that's a really cool idea.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's cool. I think the one thing I will say too, I think the overall just branding and marketing of the league has been tremendous. Like they've really done a great job of, growing that league. Like, and again, it's been there since I think what January, the beginning of January, if I'm correct. They played the first game. I think it was at the Toronto. I think PWHL Toronto. They played their first game at the Maple Leaf Gardens, and it was sold out, and it just took off from there. And the PWHL Ottawa game recently, I think I saw like on Instagram, was sold out the other week, and it's great to see because a lot of people I've talked to, because back then, women's hockey didn't have as much exposure, I guess you can say. It didn't have as much of a
Yeah,
big platform as it does now. And it's great to see. I mean, obviously the Winter Olympics obviously has been a good platform for the game in that way, but I think to have like a great competitive professional league like that is just great for the game overall. And people love it. Like people love it, and again, a lot of them are sold out games, so you can't go wrong with that.
yeah. It's just cool to see that they're implementing new ideas that we haven't seen before, like the power kill thing they do, which if you score shorthanded on the penalty kill, then your power play or the other team's power play is over. So you
Oh,
actually
really?
can get your player out of the box if you score shorthanded.
Oh, no way. I didn't know they did that. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Yeah.
So they're really bringing to the table ideas that just haven't been seen before in the game, and it's kind of making people curious a little, I think,
Yeah.
too. And say what you want about you know the success so far or not, and whether it's going to last or whatever, but I think it really might because the way they're doing it, they're really thinking about the fans and the
Mhm.
experience they're having, and also about making it more exciting and interesting. So I think they've done a good thing so far.
Absolutely, yeah, and I like that the NHL does a lot of like collaborative work with them too.
Yeah, it's cool to see too.
Yeah, for sure, right? It's a great again. It's just overall, it's been great. Again, hopefully they can keep the momentum up, and hopefully going forward the league can you know stay going. So for sure,
For sure, yeah.
yeah. And I wanted to circle back to just talking about the rebuild, and we were just talking about the new rules with the PWHL, and they're really thinking outside of the box. One
Hmm.
thing I like about what this current Habs management regime is doing is, again, they have a lot of outside of the box thinking and more up to date modern um, perspective on a lot of things, right? Like you said, they've really added to their development team, which apparently during the Bergevin regime was almost non-existent. They didn't really have much of a development program for the players, right? And that's why you kind of saw a lot of former draft picks not really, pan out. I hate to say it, but they didn't pan out, or it didn't work in our system, but maybe it worked in another team.
Hmm.
So it's just great to see that. That's been honestly the biggest breath of fresh air for me with Bergevin being gone. It's just, he did some good, did some bad, as we know, but some good. He made a team that made the Stanley Cup Finals, but I think it was just his voice was running out, and they needed a change, obviously, right after the finals, and Price and Weber were out, and then obviously the team kind of really changed from there.
Yeah, to say that it went off a cliff would be pretty much an understatement, I guess. Going to the
Yeah.
Stanley from the Stanley Cup Finals to last place in the league
Hmm.
1 year later, but then we got number 20. So, we got the guy I said we should draft all along, Yuri Slavkovsky, right? So,
Yeah. I mean,
so
yeah, he's been doing really good. This year he's really shown a lot of some big strides into his game. He's looking more confident. Obviously, I think last year, I think he should have maybe played another year in Europe or maybe in Laval. I wasn't really too keen on him making the roster, like the Habs roster, like right off the bat. But maybe Martin St. Louis and co wanted to work with him maybe more closely, and I respect that too, right? So
yeah, they trust their process. And I think that no matter what the outside noise is, St. Louis, like Marty St. Louis and, the Canadians do trust their instincts, right? So I mean, they sent Arbor Jacki down, and there was a lot of noise about that. And look how good that seems to have done for him, right? Because as he came back up, he had a couple, speed bumps out of the gate coming back after or after being called back to the Canadians. But then look at him now. I mean, now he's actually like he's holding back. He's not. He's picking his spots whenever he jumps into scrums or drops the gloves. Just really using his head a lot more, and that's what they wanted. And look what it's done, right? So, I mean, from the development side of things, with Slavkovsky, with Jacki, with any player that they're working with, they're going to work closely with everybody, whether they're here short term or not. And I think that the attitude, just the whole atmosphere over the Canes changed as we saw the whole front office revamp, right? And it really has trickled down to the players. And we all know the season that they're in, they're still rebuilding, but we have seen some key big steps from Slavkovsky, who now has over 30 points, a guy that has been such a hot topic because being the first overall pick, and then now seeing him actually shine with Nick Suzuki, who I think Suzuki and Slavkovsky are probably the two best stories. Maybe Jaden Struble you can throw in there as some of the best stories of the season, and for good reason too, because they've just stepped in and really this what's interesting about that too, from my side of things, is this is what we expected from Nick Suzuki, is that he could be a point per game player. He is a number one center, even though it's still debated sometimes on a different team. Would he be number one? Maybe not. But right now he is. And he's showing that he can keep up with the best centers in the league. And then you got Slavkovsky, who's playing on that line, just soaking in everything like a sponge, figuring out how big he actually is. And he's able to, win those board battles and win those loose pucks and contribute on the power play. And you kind of see all the things that we're expecting these guys to be. Nick Suzuki, no surprise, but Slavkovsky, it's like, okay, you guys decided to keep him here all season. He hasn't played a single game in the AHL so far, and so far they're still proving that has been the right decision.
agreed. Very, very well said with that. Like, I really think Nick Suzuki is going to be an 80 plus point player very soon.
I think it's
Um,
clear. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah,
So
100%.
so fun to watch. He's on my wall too. My interview with
Yeah.
Nick Suzuki is one of my first career experiences
Oh,
as
with the
a broadcaster. It's right here. And I
yes.
joked about it for so long because I just said, like, by the way, I interviewed Nick Suzuki every time I would talk about him in a video on my channel. And it's funny just because he was 18 years old at the time, just got traded. Like, this is maybe 2.5 months after the deal for Pacioretty and went down, and Tatar for Nick
Mhm.
Suzuki is when I met him and interviewed him before the Ice Dogs game there. And as soon as he walked out and I saw him, I got a little nervous, and I was like, "Why am I nervous? Like, he's just a kid, right? Like, what's there to be nervous about?"
Yeah.
Fast forward a few years later, the guy's the captain of the Montreal Canadiens. It's almost like a moment of I just knew he was going to be special. I'm like, I had nothing to go on. I hadn't watched a single game of Nick Suzuki, and then all of a sudden there he is. I'm asking him to do an interview, and now he's becoming a man. Like, you can see the growth, obviously, but
Mhm.
even back then, I just had this sense in my gut. I'm like, this kid's going to be special, and it's sure coming true right now.
Oh, for sure. Like when the trade happened, like I heard about him and obviously like I didn't really know much about him, but obviously I was just looking at the comments on, NHL's Instagram page and people are saying, "Oh, this is a steal for Montreal." And I was like, "Okay, I'll look at his hockey DB and obviously put up good numbers." And I was like, "Ah, maybe this is a good trade, right?" And like you were saying too, how he's really grown into like, a man. Like he's the captain of the Montreal Canadiens, and like I see the way he really like how he conducts himself. I think is the word to say. How he really conducts himself to the public and on and off the ice. I think again, just a great choice for captain of this, such a storied franchise like the Habs, and obviously being captain of Montreal Canadiens comes with a lot of responsibility, and he never shies down to that. Like he always is, doing all the charity work and, all the things like that, right? And all the little things, in the way he is with the media too. Like he's not afraid to talk to the media. And yeah, man, I've loved what I've seen from him so far. Obviously, I think he's obviously a star in the making, and yeah, it's good. Again, a Bergevin trade that went well. I mean, there's a few of them that have, right? Like
Yeah.
he did some good, and
Right.
yeah, yeah, it's great to see.
It's funny because I was a big Bergevin supporter. I was always arguing with my one friend all the time because he wasn't a Bergevin fan. And I was always finding myself to be like a Bergevin apologist to the point where I remember asking Bob McKenzie a question on his podcast when he used to do the Bobcast.
Oh,
And
wow.
he actually answered my question on it. He said my name and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And, I said, I think Bergevin is doing a good job. And I think that, you know, he's doing his best despite what all the noise in Montreal is saying. And he's like, oh, well, that's a minority viewpoint in Montreal, because at the time, this is I want to say right around 2018, I think, when Nick
Mm,
Suzuki, just before the trade or just after. But I believed in what Bergevin was doing, and we kind of learned from Dale, what kind of person he was as a GM, and he really cared. And despite his maybe not best relationship with the media sometimes, because he would hear things probably that he didn't like, and then maybe didn't always treat people you know, the way they would have liked to have been. It be not, just the way he was, and he took things personal, right? And that's when
hmm
it kind of got personal with guys in contract negotiations and then trades, and Markov, who's my favorite Montreal Canadian of all time,
hmm
and only
Yeah.
got to play, not only, but he got stuck at 990 games. Couldn't get his 1,000 games in because he couldn't get a deal worked out with Bergevin. But in that same instance, like maybe Markov, like Bergevin said, should have hired an agent to try to work out his contract and not, but he felt disrespected from Bergevin and this and that. And then, the Pacioretty deal, uh, we figured out that Max maybe just his time was up in Montreal, and then PK Subban and him getting
hmm
traded. And then um, there's a couple others that I'm just trying to think of that, where it got personal, but those are kind of the main ones. But I know the culture that Berge was trying to create in Montreal. And then now you see more of a calm, cool, collective, culture with the Canadians, where Kent Hughes, who I actually had a chance to chat with in person last year at the Canadians Prospects Challenge, and just a quiet guy. Like, I was trying to like shut my brain off, because I was trying to shut my brain off from being too excited, because I was like really excited to talk with him, and just started to ask him questions, right? And I'm still just trying to get over the fact I'm talking to the Montreal Canadiens general manager right now. Like, still that little kid
Yeah.
inside me, you know.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I'm telling you.
I went up to Marty, and I was like, I just wanted to get a picture of them and get out of there. I was just like, I don't want to bother this guy, right? But I would have loved to talk to Marty more probably and asked him questions. But seeing Kent, and then just getting to pick his brain a little bit and just get to chat with him a bit. And he was super warm and welcoming. He's like, "What's your name, Andrew?" Like, he was actually just really sincere. And I think he's got that calm, cool head about him. And I do believe in their plan. That's the whole thing about the rebuild. I do believe in him and Jeff Gordon working together and really believing in what they're doing. Kirby Doc getting injured, by the way, at the beginning of this season, was a big damper to the season right
Mm.
off the bat, as we know. But I mean, what were we expecting for this season? If we would have maybe been like sort of still in the playoff bubble right now, we're probably looking at more of like a top 15, 20 pick, or worse, maybe. But now we're looking at a top 10 draft pick again, which hopefully will help this rebuild along further. So I would never wish injury upon anybody, but you have to kind of go with the flow. You don't have a choice, right? So At this point, if we get a better draft pick from a negative situation like the Kirby Doc injury, I'm hoping that it helps the rebuild along further because Kent Hughes, Jeff Gordon, they do have a plan, like they said, and they're telling us next season is when they believe the next phase of the rebuild is going to continue. So I'm curious to see what that is going to look like.
Agreed. It's definitely gonna be good because obviously now I think I'm assuming their next phase of their rebuild is they're gonna try and be more competitive, maybe try and get out of the bottom five, bottom six of the league,
Yes, please.
right? Yeah. Like it's a definitely a bittersweet thing though, for sure. How yeah, like the games are hard to watch. Like I get mad at the TV a lot. Like my parents hear me getting mad at the TV, but and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. It's just the rebuild, but it hopefully they're a little bit more competitive. Like honestly, I think they have the prospects to, make the team like more competitive in the long run, I guess you could say. Like their
Yeah,
prospect pool is very deep, right? And um, I'm okay. And like I think we might have talked about this over the weekend too, but or last week. But honestly, I'm okay with trading, some of those prospects to maybe get some NHL ready talent, like established, top six talent, or maybe someone to help out on the blue line, on the top four, right? So somebody like that. Like I'm willing to part ways with certain prospects, but I heard a rumor. I don't know how you feel about this. I'm like a little 50-50 on it, but I've been hearing like Trevor Zegras to the Habs rumors for the last few months.
haven't we all?
Yeah, right. So I wanted to get your opinion on that. So
Yeah, it's interesting with Zegers too because you're hearing so many opinions on it now. So now you're kind of starting to wonder if he'd be a good fit and whatnot. And I mean, certainly the Canadians are going to do their research if there's even an opportunity to acquire him because what's it going to cost? That's the ultimate thing, right? He's still under contract for, or is his deal up this year? I think he has one more year on his deal. I could be wrong
I
because he's
think
on a bridge deal right now.
yeah, he might be on a bridge deal. Actually,
I'll pull it up here
I'm
while we're chatting,
pretty
but I,
sure in the offseason, right before he was done his entry level deal, and they were having trouble like agreeing on money and term, I think, because I think obviously he
right.
wanted long term, and they obviously went with the bridge deal instead. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was something along the lines of that.
Let me just, yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I just pulled it up on Cap Friendly just so we know.
sure.
But yeah, he's signed until 25, 26. So I mean,
Okay.
he's still under contract for 5.75 million
Wow.
until so basically after this season, he's got two more years left on his deal and he's still an RFA in 2026. So 5.75 left on his deal. He's 22 years old. I mean, you have to be interested, I think, in terms of the talent level. I think he's somebody that, like, I mean, what player can't come in, what young player at this point, unless your ego is just the size of Mars, can't come in and work under Marty St. Louis and learn from him. With Cole Caulfield being one of his good buddies, I mean, how has Cole not already been texting him and just being like, hey man, like if you ever do come over here, by the way, like you're gonna love working with Marty and you should listen to him. So uh, I think
Yeah.
that the idea of bringing in a player like Zegras, I don't know fully what that would look like yet, just because he's still pretty young. Whereas if you bring in someone like a more established talent, like the only other player that I looked at, by the way, like in terms of free agents in the next few years, that actually kind of would get me excited, would be Kirill Kaprizov,
Oh, yeah.
and he's a free agent not until 2026. But I mean, he's the star of the Minnesota Wild. So I mean, I can't see Bill Guerin not trying to extend him a year before his contract's up, which would be, I guess, next summer he's eligible for an extension, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, in 2025. So um, he's getting 9 million a year right now, whereas Zegers is 5.75. So what I'm curious about, and I think this is why, in terms of the contract situation, you have to consider before we get to what the Canadians have to give up for him if they want to get him. I think that the contract isn't too bad right now. It's on a bridge deal. He's a 60-point player so far in his career. He can be. And in terms of defensively, I think that's where the biggest warts are in his game. Maybe the intensity, the effort level could use a big jump, maybe from his side of things based on the highlights I've watched. But he has a heck of a lot of talent. He would fit the Canadians mold pretty well by the looks of it in the top six with Nick Suzuki, Cole, Kirby Doc, Trevor Zegras, insert Alex Newhook, Slavkovsky. So their top six would definitely be stronger. Now it's just a matter of what is the cost, right? So I think that's where, like you mentioned, there's some prospects that we'd be willing to part with, but at what level of prospect, right? Because some people say I don't really know what the Anaheim Ducks would be asking for sure, but if it begins with Caden Gooley, that's a tough one. If it begins with Arbor Jackeye, that's a tough one. But those are the kinds of players they're going to be asking for, if that's the case. If that's the case, right? So I should have brought water, by the way. Give me a minute. Sorry.
All good. No
Um,
worries.
but I remember when we were interested in Jack Eichel at one point, and that was going to start with like Nick Suzuki or Cole Caulfield. And those were non-starters for Bergevin. It was like,
Mhm.
yeah, you're not getting either of these guys. So we're out on Jack Eichel like that, and that worked out probably for the best anyway. He's
Totally.
injury prone and he got a Stanley Cup already. So it's a win-win for, well, it's a win for the Vegas Gold Knights at this point. But in terms of Zegras, I don't know because I just don't know enough about him as a person, as a player. I know a little bit. I see the talent level,
Mhm.
but you have to listen on it. It's just a matter of what's it going to cost you, and is he really going to be a fit with the Canadians? Because if you bring him over here, there's no way that they're going to necessarily not want to keep. They have to think long term because if you give up an asset that's a big deal, what have you, then you're going to want to keep Trevor Zegras long term if you're going to give up something that's going to cost you because it's going to cost you. It's probably going to hurt to get a player like Trevor Zegras because you're going to have to give up a player that you probably would rather not.
Mhm.
So I don't
Agreed.
know is my answer, I guess. I don't know
Yeah.
because I don't know what the cost is yet. So that's why I'm leaving it to Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton to figure that one out.
Agreed. Yeah. It'll definitely be like a top prospect or young player per se in the system, in the prospect pool or even on the current roster. My concerns with Zegras, I don't know. I think some people would agree with me now. I think 3 years ago, people would have disagreed, but I think he's a little bit overrated. I just think
Mhm.
again, defensively, he is like a liability. And I think just all he does, he does his Michigans and his like trick shots. I feel like he's just like a Harlem Globetrotter version of an NHL player, right? So, but that's my concerns. Like I liked him when he kind of like came into the league like 3 years ago, and he was like changing the game in that way. But now I look at it, I'm like, yeah, maybe the intensity level isn't there.
It's gonna have to change.
Eh,
Like, yeah.
for
So if
sure,
if he
for
comes
sure.
over here, he's gonna have to change the way he plays, and
Agreed.
he's gonna have to get better defensively because that's a big part of what Marty St. Louis is trying to teach the Canadians is how to play without the puck.
Yeah.
So if he's willing to come in and listen to Marty, like I mentioned, the whole thing with Cole, like
Hmm.
if he's willing to come in and he's young enough that he can make those changes though. So
Agreed. Yeah.
his talent will take care of itself, but it's a matter of how do you become a more well-rounded player like Cole Caulfield's becoming, like Nick Suzuki's becoming, like Slavkovsky's going to become, like a lot of these, if not all, the Canadiens players are going to try to learn how to play without the puck. And then when you have it, then you kind of work on the fun stuff, the offense, right?
Hmm.
So I think he's young enough that he could definitely adapt to the Marty St. Louis way of doing things. That's not my concern. It's more of what's it going to cost the Canadians? Is it worth it? Is he part of the long-term solution? I just don't know that I see that he's the answer and the only answer right now. But there's not that
Hmm.
many options that I can see where there's young talent available like him. So I'm open to it. I just want to know, and I think that everyone wants to know that's going to make sense and hopefully not cost the Canadians more than they should have to pay.
Agreed. Agreed. And hopefully, maybe in the with the draft in the off season, maybe might see the Habs make some trades and
I look forward to the
hopefully,
draft a lot more
yeah.
now, but hopefully there's
Yeah,
only a couple. This is the last draft where we're drafting this high. But it's been fun to watch them
it
at the
has.
draft. It's
Yeah.
been no shortage of drama the last two drafts.
Yeah. I mean the Slavkovsky one, I was honestly I'm happy. I've never been happy to be wrong about something before, but
Me too.
that was one. Yeah. And the Reinbacher one, like I wanted Mitchkov. I understand though, Reinbacher was the safe pick. I get, there is a lot of uncertainty with Mitchkov. He won't be probably playing in the NHL for another 2 years, they said
Yeah.
at least, right? Minimum. So, and obviously with like the things that are going on in Russia right now, it's just there was too many red flags. I get that. Like they want to Bergevin probably would have been a little bit more bold and taken him, I think. Just with sometimes he made some pretty bold decisions, right? And that probably, but at the same time though, I think, Reinbacher is good. I think he'll have a good career and I'm happy they're just letting him play in Europe and kind of find his game more before he comes to North America. And I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, apparently he's going to be here within the coming days because his team just got eliminated apparently.
Oh,
So
no. Oh, okay, there you go. No
so
way.
as
Okay, I
far
didn't know
as
that.
could be by the end of this week or next week, he comes to Laval, is what I just heard today.
Yeah, about Trevor Zegras too. I think it was a few weeks ago. I was driving to work and on the Fan 590, Sportsnet Fan 590, I was listening to it in the morning. I usually do on the way to work now. And they were talking about that rumor. They said, do you see Trevor Zegras going to Montreal? And one point they brought up that was actually really good was the Ducks and in the Western Conference it's more of like a tough gritty conference. They play harder hockey, they hit harder, and especially the Western hockey there, the West Coast, like California teams, they're always known to be a little bit more on the gritty side. And Trevor Zegras coming to Montreal with the way their system is now with with trying to have an explosive offense. I think it would be a good fit in that sense. Do you think the same way there, Deeks? Yeah.
I think well it's funny because we were basically people are calling Zegras this year's Dubois. I'm like, no, they're not the same player. So
Yeah.
I think that Dubois fits more of that West Coast type team, like you just mentioned there, where it's more gritty. He's a big guy, right? So
Mhm.
he can be more physical when he wants to be. Zegras is more of a skills and finesse kind of guy. But in terms of just the fit, I think that the fit looks pretty good from the Canadian side of things, based on the kind of player that he is in the game that they're trying to develop and turn into kind of a high octane, fast paced puck possession offensive team. So I think Zegers fits that mold, and he's still young enough again that he could develop those sides of his games that are those sides of his game that are missing. But it's the character that matters too, right? So it's who he is off the ice and how he carries himself and his work ethic. So all that has to kind of come into play in terms of him being a fit there. But I mean, he's 22 years old. He's right in that age window, which is perfect with where the Canadiens are at right now. So in that sense, I think he could be a really good fit potentially, but it's just a matter of what's going to be the cost, like I said before, and are the Canadiens willing to pay it and give up what the Anaheim Ducks would be asking for in return for him? Because certainly he seems like he could be a very good fit. I mean, if if Marty St. Louis can't mold him into the player that he could be, as young and impressionable as he still is, then I don't know who can, because Marty's got a lot of respect for what he's been able to accomplish so far with the young players, and Zegers just fits right into that age gap, and the skill goes along with what they're he'd be, like Eric Engels even said, the most talented player on the Canadians should they acquire him, right?
Totally.
So
Yeah.
we need talent. We certainly need talent. We've got skill, but we need a bit more talent, and we need to develop Trevor Zegers' skills more. The talent is just God given. You have that, but I think that there's still room for him. It's just what's going to be the cost. I think that's probably the character, obviously, very important. The attitude, the work ethic, that's very important. It's got to be in line. Like he's got to buy in, like everybody else has so far. And if he does, then he'll be fine. But it's a matter of what's the cost, and does it really propel the Canadians forward for the long term?
Yeah. Very well said. I agree. Like I remember the first skate the Ducks had. I think they got a new coach in the off season. I feel very dumb. I can't remember his name now, but I'm gonna look it up real quick. And I remember Trevor Zegras joined them for like I guess I don't know if it was training camp or it was just like one of those like more like kind of like those preseason off-season skates or whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
Um Greg Cronin, that's the guy's name, the Anaheim Ducks coach. And so I think I remember seeing him get bag skated and did a lot of no puck practice. And you saw Zegras after and the media was talking to him, and you can tell you could tell he was fuming and he just wasn't happy. And he kind of took the high road, and he's like, and they asked him like, how is the new coach? And he's like, oh yeah, he's a Boston guy, he's good, And I was like, you can see right through his eyes he's not happy with them so far. And like you said too, with how Marty, he's what he's accomplished with the young players so far in terms of developing their talent and their skill. I think he would work better with with a coach like that. Again, it's just you adapt, and that's the biggest thing about being a player in the NHL is you just whatever team you're on, whatever system you're in, you just have to adapt, and that's just all the coaches kind of just to really like narrow it down is just adapt to the system, and that's all the coaches ask. And I think he could do it. It's just again, if his head's in the game, then I think he can end up being something special if he ends up coming to Montreal.
Yeah, it's still I'm really curious to see who the Canadians are going to try to add to their top six because they know it's their biggest need. I mean, Kent Hughes has come out and said it himself. So I'm
Totally.
just curious, is there anybody else like, Shane, our buddy from Habs Tonight mentioned, looking at someone like Capo Caco who's up for a new deal this summer.
Hmm.
He's a restricted free agent too. But it's more of what fits into the Canadians sort of identity that they're trying to create. I think Zegras pretty well fits that in terms of his age, his skill set, his talent, his ability. It's got to be the attitude and work ethic, like we already mentioned, that lines up, and the fact that he's only on like a 2-year bridge deal right now, and then he's still a restricted free agent, so that still gives them control. But he's got arbitration rights, but that's still only he's not a UFA in 2 years from now. He's still a restricted free agent, so I think it could be a pretty good fit. And he's a guy who likes the spotlight, right? And Montreal, there's no brighter spotlight in the NHL. So I
Hmm.
think that, with Slavkovsky, like I think that if Zegers came in, it could be an opportunity for a guy who likes the spotlight to realize that you don't have to be the only one in the spotlight. Like everybody kind of is, right? You're all, even the fourth line guys, right? I mean, everybody gets an opportunity to shine on the Canadians. Everybody gets appreciated from the fan base if you're a good player, no matter what line you're on, as we've
Hmm.
seen over the years. So I think that Zegers could come in if he likes the spotlight, he'll enjoy it, but he'll also have to share it with guys like Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, Kirby Doc, Slavkovsky, Lane Hudson when he comes in. There's players that are going to share the spotlight, and maybe that's a good thing for Zegers. He doesn't have to be the guy; he'll just be one of the guys, and that's why I think he could be a good fit.
Totally, yeah. And that's one thing I will say. Um, I don't want them to trade Lane Hudson. If like the Ducks want Hudson, I'm hanging up the phone right away if I'm Kent Hughes because he seems like again like just a blue chip prospect. Like I haven't seen a. I mean, there's been players in the system with a high skill set like him, but like I don't know something I see him play in Boston College and also the World Juniors too, and just there's just something really special there. You don't find players like that um, every draft, right? So I'm pretty sure that obviously Lane will probably be one of the untouchables if they want to make a trade like that. But I think, like you said too, like they're really calm and poised, this management team, and they believe in the process, so they don't feel like they have to do any patchwork, to kind of just, for the team just to be good, in the next 2 years, and then the next 10 years they're not, right?
Yeah,
Kind of what like at times what it felt like with Bergevin in Montreal. He kind of made like some patchwork trades or signings maybe that he thought maybe would work for them to contend in the short run, and maybe long term maybe they should have tanked that year or whatever it may be, right? So I again, I have full confidence in the management team going forward, and I think they're going to do great things. It's just we got to be patient. A lot of times like they when they lose games, I'm gonna get a little frustrated, but then I remember like, 2, 3 years from now, it could be something really special that they have there.
that's the hope.
That's the
That's
hope.
the hope
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to switch gears and talk about this topic here. And one reason why I wanted to start this show as well, talk about sports, but um I said it in the pilot episode, but sports and spirituality are two really big things in my life, maybe the two biggest things in my life right now. I feel like like growing up, I'm grew up in an Italian family, worshiping God has always been, part of our household and our family traditions and things like that. But the older I get, the more I start to, appreciate those things, like, like going to church every Sunday. Like as a family, we started going back and and it's not just, going to church just to go to church. You learn things every week and you learn how to be a better person, a better Christian. And, I try to use that in my everyday life. And I feel like a lot of times too, like, God has really helped myself out and my family out. And a lot of times, a lot of hard times I've had in the past. And, he's always looking out for you. And I feel like, it's always good to be thankful. And, yeah, that's I gotta say about that.
Yeah, it's certainly I'm on the same page with you. Like, I was raised in a not really like a full-on Catholic upbringing in a sense, but I did go to
Mhm.
Catholic school my entire young life up until the end of high school. So I know what that's like in terms of learning about God and Christ and who he is and who he was and who he is still to this day. And certainly for me at 17 is when I kind of changed my life around and really started to. It was kind of like a seed planted, but that's when I sort of had like this sort of God realization moment when I was 17. And it was actually so impactful to the point where it really kind of shook me in a good way, where I felt like I experienced God's presence for the first time. And it's something that not everybody has experienced. So when you tell them that you've experienced God's presence, you imagine the looks that you get, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, like what were you smoking, right? But the irony is that at the time I was actually, some people will know this about me, but I was smoking a lot of marijuana. But that
Oh.
night when that happened, I wasn't. It was totally a sobriety, like I was totally sober. And basically the long story and the short story long, or long story short, I guess, is my friend shared an experience with me that he had had with God. And then all of a sudden he asked me how I felt. And I was like, wow, I don't know how to process it. And then this feeling just kind of came over me. And it was such a powerful, life changing feeling of like, oh my gosh, like I feel like there's this presence on my skin. I could like tangibly feel it. And that was when I'm like, oh my gosh, this has got to be God, because I don't know how else to explain it. Like your natural mind just can't really comprehend that kind of thing, right? The spiritual realm, right?
Hmm.
So when that happened at 17, that's when I slowly started to quit smoking marijuana. And then I quit for good. I haven't touched it since 2009. Like the last time
Wow.
I touched any drug was that in 2009. So it's been the better part of like 13 years or something like that. But there's no better high than the presence of God in comparison. I can tell you that. But it wasn't until I was about 24 years old when I met my wife and then started going to a different kind of church that was kind of more upbeat and lively. The music was, really upbeat and, uplifting. And then also a pastor who has a wife and kids, not like a priest like you're used to in the Catholic Church, where
Hmm.
it's a little hard to go for marriage advice to someone who's not actually married to another human being, right?
Hmm.
I know they're
Yeah.
married to God in Catholicism, but what I was learning was something more relatable, a spirituality, a Christianity that wasn't what I necessarily understood fully growing up. This was more, um, I don't know, kind of. I'm not sure if common sense is the best way to put it, but it just seemed to have more relatability to me at the time. And my pastor is also even a hockey fan, or once he found out I was a Montreal fan, he's a Leaf fan. So we
Oh
kind of
yeah.
had some fun with that, right?
Nice.
But you're right, man. I mean, it's a choice though, too, right? Like you're brought up in it and you kind of have to decide whether to stick with it or find your own path. But I think that we all try to find our own path, and then eventually, hopefully, it can lead back to God, because, I mean, we're all so confused in this world about who we are and what religion is the right one. It's like, well, how do you really tell somebody that your faith is the right one and yours isn't? And, you got to be careful with it. But basically, you know, it's hard to describe in a podcast episode, basically, from my side of things. But I think that in my experience, I was seeking it, and I was kind of trying to seek, the truth. And I think that that's when I came to the Bible and Christianity, and Jesus saying, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me." So that kind of is a bold statement, right? That basically means, nobody comes to heaven unless through Christ and accepting his sacrifice. And that's kind of offensive now in today's culture, right? It's like, what do you mean? Like, so there's only one
Yeah.
way to heaven and only Jesus can get you there. Why is that? What about all the other religions, right? So it's a great question. It's a great question. And we're all so afraid to have this discussion now because it's offensive. It's like it challenges the way you think, right? So what I've done in my life is I've changed the way I think. That's what repentance is, right? So when you repent,
Mhm.
you confess your sins, you also change the way you think about God and the Bible and Jesus and who he is. So that's kind of a sort of a nutshell description of how I came to where I did with my faith and just accepting, Jesus as Savior and Lord. And I'm no longer the Lord of my own life. I don't call all the shots. It's a freedom, Adrian. Honestly, it's a freedom that I can't possibly compare to anything else. Not to financial freedom, not to just finding the right person. Which, by the way, God did lead me to the right wife, who is
Absolutely.
one of the greatest blessings I've ever had in my life. She's my rock, and we have a strong foundation of faith. That's how our marriage is. That's what our marriage is built on. And it
Hmm.
wasn't by force either. It's not like she dragged me into it. I made that choice, and she allowed me to make that choice. She was a Christian growing up, but I made that choice on my own and sort of was a passenger along the journey of going back to church, to a new kind of church when I met her. And then this all sort of came to fruition. And I wish I could talk about it more. I think that's eventually what I'd like to get to, is maybe eventually someday doing a podcast or a YouTube channel about my faith, and trying to not about my faith only, but how to encourage others to seek out their own faith, and try to seek out the answers that they're still looking for. And I appreciate you, bringing it up. It's not an easy topic nowadays, where
Yeah.
everyone's offended about everything, especially in Canada. We're all so walking on eggshells with what we have to say and believe, and social media kind of just ruins it all, I think.
Oh,
uh
totally.
Face to face, like in person, is always the best way to communicate the most important topics in life. And certainly, social media doesn't help do that. I think it actually disconnects and distances us even more. Whereas at least video, it's a little closer to in person. We can see and hear each other. So there's a bit more of a relational connection there. Whereas to me, I think it's very disconnected and not healthy to do it through social media, which we're all guilty of anyway. It's the only outlet we have sometimes. But I think at least YouTube offers a different format where you go watch a guy like Ray Comfort from Living Waters on YouTube, a guy that is a street evangelist and just goes up to people, everyday people in California, and introduces the gospel to them. And sometimes the conversations don't go well. Sometimes they do go
Yeah.
well. Sometimes he tells people about Jesus and about confessing their sins, and then years later they'll come back up to him in a new interview and say, wow, I'm a Christian now. And they kind of had to make that decision on their own to do that, right? But the seed he planted is what kind of led them to eventually decide for themselves, what, yes, I do want to accept Christ as my savior. And yeah, but I mean, we could probably talk about it in more depth, but I appreciate you at least giving me the chance to talk about mine.
Oh, absolutely. Everything you said there was just so it was very beautiful. Like it's so true. Like what you said about the freedom you feel. And honestly, like I went to mass yesterday and our priest at our church, who he's a Leafs fan, which he usually brings up the Leafs every mass, like makes some kind of analogy, which makes it kind of fun. He makes church fun. And one thing he said yesterday too was, like the freedom you feel when you, have build that relationship with God, and and just like being a Christian, and following the Ten Commandments. I know, it's and honestly, like I'm not perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I've definitely sinned. And I try to be better every day, right? And I know I'm not perfect. And one thing he did say, like you said about if you feel freedom and you feel free, you'll feel more free when if you repent sin. And it's so true what he said. Like it's just every week I go and I learn something new. Like I get like a new perspective on life. And it's just something I've really needed. Like, I was saying about, how I've turned to God in some really hard times of my life. Like about maybe 4 years ago, I was going through maybe some of the hardest times of my life I've ever felt. I was 23 and there was a lot going on, and I was kind of falling down a bad road in terms of like falling down a bad slope with like I was again smoking weed, and I was partying a lot, and those are not really good positive things with your life. And it started off as just like, on weekends when I wasn't working, get together with the guys, and we get messed up, right? Like it was just, kind of like the cool thing to do. And then after a while it became a lifestyle where it was like an everyday thing, and it led to other drugs and like bad things and bad
Mm.
choices. And I remember there was some nights I was like in my room and I was just staring up at the ceiling, and I was like, am I ever gonna get, am I gonna get out of this, right? And I turned to God, and I mean, he's always been present in my life, but I'd say in the last 3, 4 years, I think I've turned to him more and built the relationship and maybe rebuilt the relationship with him. As like it's just and also just getting toxic people out of my life. And I always believe that God heard the conversations that I didn't hear, that I wasn't there for. And these the people, the toxic people, having the falling outs with them was him doing his work, working up there and, behind the scenes. And, he heard what these people may have said about me, or, or how they felt, or whatever was going on. Right. And he said, okay, these aren't the right people for you. These are not the people to, repent you from sin. They're going to make you sin more. And, and then later on in that year, I met my girlfriend, and, she's been a big part of my life ever since. And I think I think she saved me in a lot of ways. I think like yeah, it gets me a little emotional to talk about, but like I think she really saved me in a lot of ways, and I don't know where I'd be for almost 4 years later without her. And I thank God every day that I have her, and she's always making sure I'm on the right track. And she's she's the more mature one than me, so she's got a good head on her shoulders, and like my parents just absolutely love her too. And yeah, like again, I'm just so thankful for the way things have gone. And I think having God in my life has really changed the course and really made things a lot more positive. And I feel, with a lot of things, with doing like, these podcasts, and, I do like a lot of some of the content creating online. And I feel like I have more positive purpose in my life. And yeah, I can't be more thankful.
That's awesome. No, it's great to hear more of your
Yeah.
story, man. And it's so true. And
Thank you.
you know, we all fall short of the mark, right? So I mean, that's what the Bible teaches us too, is that there's not one except for Christ who had no sin. Like we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So it's something that we struggle with daily. It really is,
Mhm.
right? So, but it's at the same time, it's the more you dig into your faith, which I'm trying to do more lately too, is you really start to realize that without you have to make the effort. So you kind of meet God halfway in a sense, right? You have to be
Mhm.
willing to, because he doesn't force a relationship with you upon you. It's a choice that we make, right? So it's important to surround yourself with the right people. And like you mentioned, getting toxic people out of your life, that's kind of something that is going to help you, obviously, and help me. Done the same for me. And you kind of want to have people in your corner that are going to, even if they don't agree with you about your faith, at least they'll respect you enough that even if they don't agree, you can still respect each other. I think that's one of the biggest disconnects that people don't understand is that you don't have to look at somebody who's a person of faith, specifically a Christian, Bible believing Christian like myself, as somebody who automatically just judges you or dismisses you if you don't believe. Like there's such a false understanding about, what Christianity and a relationship with Christ is supposed to be about. And that's where the waters get muddied, I think, is where we're all human beings, right? So there's misinterpretations they're easy to find, right? So you have to sort of look for the authentic ones who are representing Christ the right way. And that's the ones I've tried to lean towards. And I think that my church has done a wonderful job of, having people there that actually are genuine and authentic and walk their walk, not just talk the talk and say, hey, like, by the way, this is how you should be living and this is what you should do. No, no, no. It's more of like, let me lead you to what's got me to a better place. And here, let me pass you the ball and let you run with it and figure it out. And then if you need help, I'm here, kind of thing, So it's good to have the right people in your corner who understand and respect your new life choices if it's faith, as an example. Because it's hard to the Bible says to preach the gospel to everybody, but sometimes don't always use words. Well, that's the St. Francis of Assisi quote. It's not necessarily right from scripture, but it's a matter of trying to find a way to represent Christ and not misrepresent him, because I think that happens too much, especially online. You can find it in 2 seconds, somebody who's contradicting what Christ was really about, or just sort of pushing it too far and putting too much of their own opinion into his message. And I think that's where the
Hmm.
waters get muddied, like I said. So it's certainly changed my life for the better. There's no question that without God in my life that I wouldn't be where I am. He's helped me get on the path, um, the right path, in my opinion, and also just to even learn how to deal with money better and how to respect money, and to we're just stewards at the end of the day. We're only on this planet for under 100 years, you know what I mean? So money is certainly a big part of what we do in terms of working for as long as we do in our lives, but how to steward it and how to realize that being generous is how God wants us to live, with our hands, sorry, forgive my knocking the mic,
No,
our
it's
hands
okay.
open and not closed, you know. So people will look at, well, the Bible says to give 10% of your income, and if your church doesn't, if you don't do that, then your church is going to judge you and this and that. It's like, no, I've been giving 10% of my income for 12, better part of 10, 12 years now, and my finances are in better shape than they've ever been in. We own
Wow.
our own home. Um, we're paying off our house. We're not slaves to money, in a sense. Like, we're trusting God with our money. Believe it or not, the Bible teaches a lot about it. So it's not a matter of control or force that our church or the Bible is. It's actually, you know, one of the areas of the Bible where God says to test him in this. And if anything, he's really answered that test for us because we've trusted him with our finances, and we're in a position where we don't make, like, a lot of money, but we make enough that we're able to be content and we're not stressed about money. We don't argue about money. And then also other areas, of course, like, family dynamics and health, and a lot of areas I still need better work in, Adrian. I'll be honest with you, in terms of, being in better shape and eating right. I mean, there's a lot of things. Gluttony, there's tons of stuff we can do wrong if we try hard enough. But a long-winded way of saying that, God is certainly searching for those that would be wanting to have a relationship with him. He's a loving father. He's our creator. You know what I mean? And I think that we have to do a better job. I'm holding myself accountable of trying to represent Christ the right way, so that he's attractive to the world and not a repellent, because he's certainly the one that is going to change it all for the better for anybody.
Very well said. I totally agree, and I think that's really great that you and your wife have such a great relationship with God, and that it's in fact it's sorry impacted your life in a very positive way. I just
Very
think,
much.
yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Like I think people have to. I find like our society, it's back when, our parents were growing up, or, like my grandparents came here from Italy, and, like they worship God there, and, they worship God here. And growing up, like it was still, again, it was part of society, and people had good values in that sense. Sometimes I feel like society lacks values, and they've kind of gone away from God. And I feel a lot of people these days are a little bit lost. It seems like I see a lot of like
Hmm.
weird things on the internet with it, and like people are like just very lost. Like they don't have really much values, or and they're not bad people per se. It's just, they just maybe they need they need to find purpose through religion or through God, you know, and that's why I think it's great that, like you said, there's that one preacher that goes to the streets of California and try to talk to people and maybe, you know, get people, you know, maybe to change people's lives, right? And I think that's a good way to start. And you know, I think it's just one thing like a friend of mine and I were talking about too, because like I grew up with him and we both went to a Catholic school, and you know, he hasn't really kept like, you know, his religion, but you know, he respects that I have, and you know, a lot of my friends do. And you know, but he one thing he did say about, you know, going to a Catholic school and things like that. It's just the values they teach you are better than anything you can learn growing up. Like I would rather, like whenever I have kids one day, I want to put them in a Catholic school over a public school. I just think they'll get you know, maybe, I don't know so much the education, maybe it will be better. I don't know what things are like these days because I haven't been in school in a long time, but I think like just the values to be a good person and how to treat your neighbor is just something that you know, you won't get from a public school. And it's nothing to disrespect the, you know, the public school board or whatever name it, but I just think if you bring your kids in a Catholic school, I think your child will just get will learn a lot more and a lot more, you know, positive things that will, you know, impact them for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I mean, school is a tough one because I
Mhm.
went to school in a Catholic school. My wife went
Same.
to a public school, but that's where parenting really comes in because no matter what school system you decide to put your kids in, your parents are you know the first and primary teachers in your life, in my opinion. So I think
Hmm.
that they have, and even though society is just like trying to fight against that somehow for some reason,
Yeah.
with you know the school system and whatnot, which is a whole other topic for another day. But I
Yeah.
think that parents have and should have a good say in their kids' lives in terms of what kind of values they want to instill in them outside the school walls. So I think
Hmm.
that the parents are the primary responsibility. I don't think you can just trust schools to raise their kids. That's not. I don't think that was the purpose or design of the family unit from God's creation. I think that it starts with parents and then grandparents.
Hmm.
If you're blessed to still have them. I grew up mostly without grandparents. They had mostly passed on, except for my one grandmother, who I had till I was 21, which was
Oh.
great. But that's where it all starts is with the family, right? So it's the environment that you grow up in. It's not necessarily just the school you go to. So I think that's a big factor too.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot to think of it like that too, but I totally agree with you. It's family always comes first, and yes, I do agree. Like the way your parents bring you up, and your parents are the number one teachers in your life. In the end of the day, they're supposed to. I think yeah, your parents are supposed to impact your life. You know, more than a school can. I think it's just yes, the school can teach you good values and you know how to be a good person, respectful, but I think yes, your parents should be teaching you that
That's
first and
assuming
foremost. Yeah.
that's assuming you have both parents, and not everybody does
Yes.
either. So
Yes, or whatever
there's
support system you come from, right? So for
right,
sure. For sure.
right.
Yeah. And I just wanted to switch gears a little. Again, Drew, thanks for talking about that. That was some very powerful stuff, and I'm very happy that you were able to share that with us today. And I
Thank you.
wanted, yeah, no problem. I wanted to switch gears. One last topic. Well, I told you before the show went on, but for any baseball fans, any Blue Jays fans, Josh Donaldson has announced his retirement from Major League Baseball today. And you know, I love Josh Donaldson. He was one of my favorite athletes, honestly, one of my favorite athletes ever. It's kind of crazy to say that, but he just had such a big impact on the Blue Jays and the city of Toronto, and just I love the swagger and uh seems like a really at times seemed like a really down to earth guy, the way when he talks to the media in Toronto, and he still comes here in the off season too because his wife is from here, so he's still very connected with the city, which is really cool. I was sad when when they traded him in 2018, but you know, the writing was kind of on the wall. But yeah, I wanted to just wish him a very happy retirement and, you know, spend time with his wife and I think he has two kids now, if I'm correct. And yeah, just wanted to wish him a very happy retirement.
Yeah, certainly he was a fun Blue Jay to have. I actually have his
Mhm.
shirt upstairs. It doesn't fit me anymore because I've just outgrown it, unfortunately. But I have to put
Yeah.
some healthy weight on him. Maybe that's what it is. So, but he was certainly the bringer of rain, right? That was his nickname.
That's right.
So he was a heck of a lot of fun to watch during those playoff runs, especially in 15 and 16. And he really was sort of the beginning of what became that big, season. The Jays, when he won the MVP in 2015, and the Jays won the AL division, I think it was,
Yeah, they
and
won the AL East. Yeah.
which led eventually to the playoff run and the bat flip, and just a really a fun season where the Jays couldn't do a whole lot of wrong. It was like, oh man, it was amazing. And I remember going to the Rogers Center, going to games in the summertime that year, and um, it was really kicking up, and the buzz was really starting to become alive again around the Blue Jays, and certainly Josh Donaldson was a big part of that. So yeah, happy retirement to him, no doubt. He was a heck of a lot of fun to watch for a few years. He really kind of helped reignite the Blue Jays fan base, maybe the distant fans, to come back and start watching them again. And Josh was a one of the reasons for that, I think, with Batista and Encarnacion and that whole crew. But he was certainly right at the top, near the top of that list of players who made the Jays exciting again.
Totally agree. He definitely helped revamp the baseball culture in Toronto. And I remember when the trade went down, I was playing just some pickup hockey down the street from my house. And obviously, it was a Friday night, and my brother was picking me up, and he texted me while I was playing. And I was still in high school. I was actually, or no, I lied. I wasn't in high school. I was like first year college, and he texted me and he was like, Josh Donaldson or Brett Laurie got traded to the Oakland Athletics. And I'm like, for who? And then he said Josh Donaldson and then a bunch of the other, prospects and stuff. And right away I saw that and I was like, okay, this is a steal because like he was a all-star the year before. And obviously I heard about him obviously because he had a great season before with Oakland. And that's pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. I knew from day one he was going to be something special. And um, yeah, I would love to have him on this show one day, but get in touch with him somehow. But that would be pretty awesome for sure. And again, happy retirement to him.
For sure. No, he was a heck of a lot of fun. He brought a
Yeah.
lot of rain in his short time.
Oh, hell yeah, did he ever? He was pretty awesome. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. I think we're almost running out of time on the Zoom chat. So, again, guys, thank you everybody for watching. Drew Dekes, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. You're always a pleasure to talk to. So, everyone, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. We have more content coming. And again, thank you again, everybody. God bless and take care.
Thanks, Adrian.
Oh, no problem.